All right, thank you everyone for joining us and welcome to WADR specials in commemoration of International Women's Day 2025. And you're listening to us on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal. And on YouTube, you're watching us at WADR News, Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Now, this year's theme for International Women's Day calls for action that can unlock equal rights, power, and opportunities for all, and a future where no one is left behind. Now, more central to this vision is empowering next generation youth, particularly young women and adolescent girls, as catalysts for lasting change. On this edition of the program, we'll be touching on these issues and many more. And our guest is Madam Aisha Yesufu. As a matter of fact, let me call her full name. Our guest is Madam Aisha Yesufu. She is a Nigerian political activist and businesswoman. She is the co-founder of Bring Back Our Girls movement, which brought attention to the abduction of over 200 girls from a secondary school in Chibok, northeast Nigeria, on the 14th of April 2014 by a terrorist group known as Boko Haram. Now, she talks about politics and anything governance, and she's very, very passionate about her country, Nigeria. Big Auntie Aisha, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this year's theme for all women and girls, rights, equality, and empowerment, we're going to be looking at these key words. First, let's start with rights. Now, why do we always insist on women's rights at a time when the struggle is intensifying? We're taking Nigeria as a case study in this case.
The reason why we focus on women's rights is because women's rights are human rights. And unfortunately, in this part of the world, there are a lot of people who feel that women don't have rights. They're supposed to be owned by someone. They're seen more as commodities than as human beings with their own agencies. And so that's why constantly we are having to talk about it. And the fact that there is a need for a conversation, there is a need to tell people that women have their own rights, says everything about how women are looked upon. So we are seen as people who ordinarily shouldn't have our rights. We should only be seen and not heard. And most people will tell you, oh, it's culture, it's the African culture. Just yesterday on the space, we are having same discussion, and somebody on the space is saying that, you know, the custom, the African culture and all of that. I'm wondering which African culture are you talking about? The African culture we had before, colonialism was a culture where women were treated with respect, where they were part of governance, they were part of the entrepreneurial activities that were going on, and they were also part of, the development of their society until we had colonialism coming, where they had women who looked pretty and sipped tea, and they forced that on us, and we've been struggling, over 100 years to be able to reclaim our position that we had before colonialism. But the fact that we are still talking about women's rights tells you everything you need to know about how marginalized women are in this part of the world.
Indeed. Then equality. I mean, this is one word that gender equality is one word that has, I mean, if you check in the last 5 years, it's been a major word, a word that you can now register even with a new dictionary, gender equality. Why do we keep on talking about gender equality, especially in the Nigerian space?
Well, it is because one gender is not seen as equal. One gender is seen as subhuman. And so that's the reason why it is so big on it. There are people who will tell you that, oh, don't ask for gender equality, ask for gender equity instead, that men and women cannot be equal. Why is that? Why do they have that? Yes, there are differences, just like we are all human beings, you understand? As human beings, we're all equal, whatever your gender, whatever your religion, whatever your tribe, whatever your race, we're equal. But of course, we have different abilities. and we have different physical and physiological makeup, and so that makes sure there's a distinct difference, but it doesn't mean that we're not equal. And in this, so we have a situation whereby people feel that women are not supposed to attain the same thing. For example, you're talking about leadership.
Yeah.
Instead of us to focus on who is most competent, who has the most capacity, who has character to be able to lead and govern very well, people will rather focus on what gender is it that the person is. So you have someone who is the best qualified, for example, to govern a particular state, country, or whatever it is. Some people will say that, oh, they can't vote for that person based on that person's gender. And so these are some of the things that we're talking about. Also, when it comes to accessibility to certain things, for example, education, we still have places where they feel because you're a girl, you shouldn't be in the classroom. And we're saying, when we're talking about gender equality, we are not saying that the girl should be in the classroom and the boy should be taken out. No, we are saying that there's a space for both of them. You understand? When we're talking about gender equality, we're not saying that the woman should take over the man's job. We're saying that everybody should be paid according to what they bring to the table, their capacity, and they should be given, a level playing ground. When we're also talking about gender equality, we're not saying that the woman should beat the man. We're only saying that the man shouldn't see a woman as something to be toyed with and beaten. And so at the end of the day, one of the questions I always ask people is that if a woman is fighting for gender equality, what does it take away from you? It takes away nothing. So why are people afraid of that particular term?
Well, let me just quickly add to that before I pick on the last word in this year's International Women's Day theme. And this is oftentimes being asked, especially among the men's folk, when we have gathering of the men. Can women make good leaders?
Have men made good leaders? We have example. So this is how funny this is, right? And I think the conversation we are having right now is in the context of, let's say, Nigeria, most African countries. Let me use my country, Nigeria. Right now, the country has been destroyed by men.
How so?
We have bad governance, no accountability, no transparency. The country is literally at the lowest you can think about, when we're supposed to be up there. And who have been the people that have led the country from 15 years now of amalgamation, over 60 years of independence? It's been men. And yet, a gathering of men are asking questions whether women can lead the country in a country that's already destroyed. That tells you everything. I think the conversation that ends in there. It's an arrogance. There's a patriarchal arrogance. You're failing. You're not doing it well. Yet, you're not, instead of you to admit and take responsibility for that failure and say, how do we get the best to go in? You would rather hold on to that failure and continue to fail and say to yourself, oh, can women make good leaders? Have men made, good leaders?
And actually, have there been opportunities for women in Nigeria, especially in governance, and they make good use of it? Have there been that opportunity?
This question just makes me laugh in a way when you say they've made good use of it. Yes, there have been. A lot of women have done so well. You're talking about the Dr. Ezekwesili. You're talking about the Okonjo-Iweala. You're talking about a whole lot of them that have been in position, have proven the same. But this is the thing. And this is where the hypocrisy comes into it. We put more emphasis on the woman and say she has to do 10 times more than her male counterpart before she's even acknowledged of doing something. And then she just has to do 0.1% worse than her male counterpart. And she's seen as the one that is doing the most. Because one of the things they said to you, they will look at maybe some women who haven't done something. They will say that, oh, but they gave this woman a chance, see what she did. I'll give you an example. I always say to them, for every Dezani, there are thousands of Dasuki. And that hasn't stopped men from continuing to be in a leadership position. If you're talking about corruption, before you talk about one woman who has been corrupt, and there are thousands of men who have been corrupt, and those men have not reflected on the generality of men to stop them from occupying offices. But you see, some people will bring maybe a woman from somewhere who has done something and say, oh, this is why they don't give women. When are we going to get? I would say, if we're being fair with ourselves, we would have said to the men folk, especially in Nigeria, step aside for the next 50 years. Let women be in charge, and let's see where Nigeria will be.
But don't you think this is possible, Auntie Aisha?
Let me just round up.
Yeah.
Let me just round up this before you give me the. On a more serious note, what we are doing, this is not about gender war. This is supposed to be about how do we get the best people to lead us, for us to have the best lives we can have while on earth. It's almost as if someone who has been given 2 perfect working legs, and the person decides to hobble on one leg and not use the other one. That is what we do when we do all of these gender wars and put one gender and subdue one gender and keep them down. I didn't hear your last question.
Yeah, I was trying to just to follow up on what the issue you raised about giving women an opportunity. I'm asking, don't you think this is possible, especially during election year? We don't see much women come out on the front to run, but we see a lot of women, at the background supporting the men folks. Don't you think it should be the other way? I mean, if we want to see these changes that you're talking about.
It's all about power. One of the things I always say to men, and I think I even mentioned it yesterday in a particular space that I was in. I said, have you ever seen a man who was running for election and they called him a prostitute? Or is it gigolo they call it? Was the male version of a prostitute? I don't think you've ever had that. There are a lot of women, every woman that has run for office, that's the first thing she's called. Every woman that has run for office is being told, this is not African. This is not custom. This is not religion. I don't think there's any man that decided he was going to run for office and they said to him his religion prevents him from being a leader or his custom prevents him from being a leader. I don't think so. But every woman that runs, she always gets to hear that the custom prevents you from being a leader, religion prevents you from being a leader. We've seen right from time where women have been conditioned that they are not supposed to be in leadership position. They're supposed to be seen and not heard. And for those who try to stand up and say, no, it's not about your gender, it's about your capacity, and you have the capacity, you can't do it. And sometimes we always get people who will say to us, oh, women are more than 50% of the population. They have more numbers. If they truly wanted to have women in, they can get there. And I also ask the question, have you ever seen a man who was threatened with a death or threatened with divorce because of their political choices or if they wanted to run? No. And that's what women say. A lot of women, not even running, even their voting choices are not them. Almost as if the agencies of women have been stripped away from them, where they are not. And this is where we come back to that first question you asked of women's rights, of understanding that this is an individual and not a possession and should have their right. It's not, like when people say, don't you have sisters? She's somebody's sister. Sometimes when they want to give you a right, they say she's somebody's wife, she's somebody's sister, she's somebody's cousin. She's not. She's enough in her own. So we have that power is not there. The power dynamics are not there. And so there are people who control that power. And this comes from a lot of places in terms of education, in terms of the barriers that are before women are a whole lot. We have mindset barrier, we have cultural, religious barrier, we have educational barrier, we have financial barrier. We are in a place where you find out that a single lady will be told not to buy a car. Even when she's working, she's earning, she has the money, she'll be told, don't buy a car. If you buy a car, you're going to drive away the suitors. Nobody ever tells a man not to buy a car. If he buys a car, he's going to drive away the brides or potential wives and all of that. So these are ways in which women have been put down. So when they say to us, why are they not just running? It's the systemic, cultural, religious obstacles that have been put front and behind them, even before they were born. That is a problem. We have women that have been killed just because they were pregnant with a girl child. That tells you everything.
Well, these social issues that you've talked about, are they really preventing women from being empowered? We've had this conversation with activists like yourself, And some of the issues they pointed out include cultural, religious, and the fact that women at the grassroots are not really allowed to excel as their counterpart in urban areas, in cities. Why is this so? Why is there that disparity between women in local communities and those in the cities?
So for me, I think for me it's the other way around. Women in the local and the grassroots are actually more empowered than women in the urban area, not in terms of finances. They don't have as much money as women in the upper area, but they are more powerful. So at that moment, the place is less patriarchal. Do you know why? Because most of the women are actually the breadwinners. I didn't get to understand this until 2018 when Dr. Ezekwesili was running for president and I was part of her campaign. You find out that women at the grassroots, market women, not as educated, they are the ones who are the breadwinners, mostly breadwinners in their society. Their husbands probably have lost their jobs or they can't do this. They're the ones who are the entrepreneurs, traders in the market, going to farm and they're providing. And so they are not dependent on patriarchy. They don't have to defend patriarchy or sort of like a chart to read for them to get certain things. But when you come to the urban area, that it's more, we have more educated women, higher class, women, they are more afraid because they are in a system that is patriarchal in nature, that it's male dominated. And so you have to behave in a certain way or you're being punished. So you find the women that were in the market and the one that were in the grass were like, yes, time don't reach where women go rule. It's time for a woman to be president. This one where all these men, may they go sit down. And then you come to the urban area. For me, it was an eye-opener for me in 2018. This is something that I experienced. And then the more educated women are thinking, oh, do you think they are going to allow a woman to be? So you see there was that limitation on their behalf. And I will tell you in terms of when it comes to, economic empowerment, you see women who are educated, have everything, their husband stops them from going to work. They are being told, oh, you're not supposed to be too ambitious. Some of them are earning money. They can't buy properties because their husbands are not giving approval, or their partners, or their parents, or their fathers, their brothers. There's always one thing or the other, not allowing them to own their economic, power. As a Muslim, and mine is different because as a Muslim, over 1,000 years ago, Islam had already given me my right to my economic, empowerment, my properties to control and everything. But you still see people who bring culture. Even in my place, they will say the culture supersedes. They will ensure the culture supersedes the religion at the moment. So they pick and choose where there's patriarchal dominance, and that's what they continue to use. So there's a whole lot that stops the woman from actually going on to that potential that she's supposed to be at. But for me, I would tell you that from my own experience, those women at the lower level, I shouldn't say lower level, at the
community level,
in the market, when you're talking about the social economic status, they're usually more powerful because in the market, there's no patriarchy per se. It's about you want to sell, I want to sell, and that whole thing. And it's always about power dynamics. And so the more power you have in terms of your contributory rights and all of that, the more you are not as dominated. It's not to say that they are not, but what I found that they have certain level of freedom more than they are usually more higher educated ones.
In the political space, they've been a great advocate for there to be 50-50 in terms of women inclusion in governance. And we've seen, for instance, here in Senegal, the parliament is made up of 50-50, 50% for women, 50% for men. And if you look at across West Africa, Senegal seems to be the only country that have achieved that, maybe followed by Ghana. But in terms of Nigeria, we are seeing a very low on the representation of the women folks in governance. When you talk about the parliament, the House of Representatives, the Senate itself, as a matter of fact, there are only 3 women now in the Senate. Why, for this long, why are we still having this issue of underrepresentation, amongst women being in governance, particularly in Nigeria?
Well, it comes down to the fact that in Nigeria, where women are not seen as equal, and I think there are 4 women in the Senate, even though the Senate have tried to suspend. They say they've suspended one. She shouldn't put herself. She shouldn't address herself as a senator. She is the senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She was voted by her constituents. Even when they tried to steal her mandate, she went to the court and she got her mandate back. So the Senate does not have any right, any constitutional right, any legal right to strip her of her being a senator. Even the court cannot strip her of her senatorial title. It's only her people, that her constituent, that can recall her back if they no longer want her as Senate. So we have 4 women there in the Senate. We have a very low representation because of this mindset that women are not supposed to be in leadership. There are some, even in Nigeria, there are a lot of states where there are not a single woman in the State House of Assembly. So you wonder, when you're having a conversation, how are you going to look at the whole picture when you're only seeing half of the picture? You can't make this. You're supposed to make decision for the whole picture, but you only have half of the picture with you. Your decision will always be flawed because you can't say it. And so for those who have been able to say 50-50, I mean, there's a sense in that. Not that you're taking away the power of anyone, but that this is the whole picture. Let 50-50 representation come together and sit down and make decision based on that whole picture. Yeah. There are certain ways beyond we're all human beings. We have our subtle differences in terms of our physical attributes, our psychological attributes, the way we look at things, our experiences. I, as a woman, the experience that I have as a woman is different from that a man has. For example, I'm going into a restroom. The first thing I'm thinking about is that, how is the door of the restroom? Is it the one that comes in, or is it the one that is pulled out? And so that makes my decision. I mean, a man wouldn't think about that. He just walks in there. Because I have to think about, what if I'm here and somebody tries to attack me and tries to force the door open? Will I be able to use my body to hold the door and prevent him from pushing it in? Or is it the one that is going to pull the door, and then he has power to pull the door more than me? So you see, these are subtle things that when you're making policies, for someone who hasn't lived that life, he doesn't understand. But for me, who has lived that life, I'm able to bring that to the table and say, look at this thing from another point of view, which makes it more robust. Then when you're enacting laws, when you're putting down policies, you're thinking about the whole picture, and you are able to have something that is good out there. But in our own case, where you have literally same people thinking same way, looking at issues from the same point of view, just making decisions, and we wonder why things are not working very well. There is a picture that I saw the other day, where there was a conversation about how to water in a community, or about how to get water there, and the whole people who were having the discussion were men. Meanwhile, the people who go to fetch water are women. And there in that picture, you see the men sitting on the mat where they're having this discussion, and the women with this thing on their pots on their head going to the stream. You don't go to the stream. You don't know what they go through. You don't know what they pass through. You don't know what they face there. How then are you the only ones making decision? You make decision thinking you know, but you don't have the whole knowledge. And so this is what happens when we don't have women at the seat of table. And I think research has shown that it's smart politics for you to put women in there, because countries that are doing so well are countries where they have higher representation of women. And we've seen those that say women should not be at the table, what the level of development and growth in such countries.
Well, let me take you back to the Nigerian Senate. This is one issue that we have been following and reporting here in Senegal, and also being reported across West Africa. As a matter of fact, initially it was a local news, but over time, as you know, development as the situation evolved, it became an international news, reported even beyond our sub-region. What do you think about this allegations of sexual harassment which is being leveled against Nigeria's Senate president, and that has seen the accuser, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, suspended for 6 months. And then from our findings, we realized that she is representing, there are 5 local governments in her constituency, and she's representing millions of people within that Kogi North Central. First, what does this mean for the people of Kogi Central, knowing that they no longer have a representation in the Senate? And secondly, what does this also mean for the women folks, knowing that with issues like this, it can easily be swept under the carpet or get away with?
I think, first of all, the constitutional rights that the people of her constituency have, I think, is it Kogi, I'm not sure now whether it's Kogi North Senatorial District
Kogi Central.
also, but Kogi Central Senatorial District. So their constitutional right has been taken away from them, has been trampled on them, and they have a constitutional right for a representation at the Senate, and they have a senator that they have sent in. They voted during election, and the person that they voted for is there. I do not think, and there are also court rulings on the matter. So that the National Assembly does not have a right to I think that's why either to suspend someone or suspend someone. There's a ruling that says for a certain number of no more than 14 days. For me, and I think this needs to be tested all the way to the Supreme Court. There's one at the appeal court. There's a need to test this all the way to Supreme Court, because the National Assembly, the Senate, or whether it be the Senate or the House of Representatives, should not have a right to suspend anyone from their legislative duties. Suspension, if somebody has done something, because of course there has to be, if they say there has to be punishment for bad behavior where there is, and which is not the case right now that we have. What they should do would be to suspend the person from taking part in committee duties, which is the power that they had given that person, maybe possibly oversight functions, maybe traveling and all of that. But the legislative duties should be sacrosanct, because it was the people that brought that person in. Because right now what they've done is that millions of people, they have rendered them voiceless. They have rendered them without representation, and they're saying for 6 months. And you know why they talk about 6 months? 6 months is not just our normal calendar 6 months.
Yes.
It's 6 months based on the sitting of the Senate. For every time that they go on break, those days are not being counted. Does that? And then not just only that, you say you take away all her payments, all her allowances, even her security, and then tell her that she should not use the title of a senator, something you did not give her. What gave the Senate the right to take away a title from them that they didn't give her? That's one. On the issue of what does this mean for women, women face a lot of sexual harassment in Nigeria, where people feel that they have a right to women's body. There was a campaign that went on for a long time, and it's still going on, where to put your hands to yourself. For example, you go to a market in Nigeria and you find out that a random man from nowhere will just come and hit you on your behind, touch your body parts and all of that. And women are saying, no, you don't have a right. And they think they have a right to do it. It's a campaign that is going on. We have a lot of sexual harassment allegations against people, whether it be in school. We had the sex for grades that was done, whereby it was an investigative journalism that was done to bring that to the fore. We have a lot of women that are facing sexual allegations, be it from their bosses and in different places, in schools, in places of work and all of that. And here we have a woman who, when it comes to politics, that's one of a top-ranking woman. That's a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, accusing the Senate president of sexual harassment. And instead of there to be an independent investigation, a transparent investigation, and the matter being looked at, she's being shut down. If a woman at that level is being shut down, then what happens to women at lower level or other levels out there that are constantly trying to speak, and they are also being shut down? And by the way, let's not forget, this is not the first time that the Senate president has been accused by a high-ranking a woman, the former MD, managing director of NNDC, Niger Delta
NDDC, yes.
Development Commission, had said on air, on national TV, that she slapped him over sexual harassment. And to turn this whole thing and then come and just, not only was it done, the Senate President Akpabio himself became the judge and presided over it. He was the one that received the petition. He was the one that presided over the session. That says everything about the integrity of the Senate itself. We have men and women there who are cowards, who are not courageous, who can stand for Nigeria, because they ought to have asked the Senate President Akpabio to step down over that. And when they couldn't tell him to step down, the Senate President was supposed to have integrity to excuse himself from that particular session. He didn't. They did that. Now they are coming to say that, oh, the reason why they suspended her is not because of the sexual harassment allegation, but because of what she did when she refused to change her seat. And which is something that even the current Senate President, under whom she did it, who will say immediately that she was going to be sentenced, what right does he have? They are first among equal. He's not anybody's boss. They were all voted in. Some have other this thing. The same Senate President had also had a meltdown when his seats were changed, and he challenged it. And for her, she's saying, if you're going to change my seat, at least inform me. There are certain privileges they have in their rule book, but at the end of the day, it comes to tell you there's always that conspiracy against women. Harsher treatments are given to them. Everything to put the voice of the woman down, say that, oh, women are not supposed to. And there was even someone who came out to say that that women should not be they should be forced to take a mental stability test. I think it's the same. And the person who was saying it looked like somebody who actually escaped from a psychiatric hospital. I'm like, guy, they are doing your bed there for psychiatric hospital. You didn't get the talk, say women mental stability. But all the things that men have done. And let me tell you something, for those who don't even understand, for every time that the Senate or the National Assembly has suspended someone, it is always either they are fighting for their rights, fighting for the rights of Nigeria, or putting out information that is where the Senate is doing things wrong. The Senate never suspends, the Senate or the House of Representatives, the National Assembly as a whole, never suspends any member who does anything wrong, either found to have been corrupt or have done something wrong. They never. So it's a pattern that they have. They only punish those who do the right thing or are standing for the right thing. And I'll give you one quick example. I think it was in I can't remember now, 2019 or there, not the Senate, the previous one. I think the Night Assembly, if I'm not mistaken, where a senator was caught on camera physically assaulting a lady where he had gone to buy something.
Yes.
And guess what? The Senate came out to protect them. Tinubu's wife, who was on that team, came out to say they were going to protect this particular senator, and they did protect him. They didn't suspend him. He brought disrepute to not only the Senate but also to Nigeria, but nothing was done about that. But most of them are coming to tell us that, oh, the Senate is a place of decorum. When they were fighting, and we've seen the National Assembly where they fight a lot, they actually exchange blows. They don't remember it's a place of decorum. But when it is time to punish women, that they remember they have a place of it's a place of decorum.
Indeed. As we round up this conversation, let's talk a bit about you. I mean, you've been at the forefront of activism in Nigeria, and you are well known across West Africa and the world at large. As a matter of fact, most women here in Senegal, talk about Aisha Yesufu. They talk about you a whole lot. What is that thing that motivates you in wanting to fight for the women folks and for their rights?
For me, I hate injustice, and I've always been like this even as a child. Though it got me a lot of beatings, I got punished a lot. I just can't stand it. And I was for the number of times I fought as a child, it was never about me. Someone did something to me. It's always about someone did something to somebody else. And for me, I would always speak up. And I just hate bullying. So when I see bullies, I stand up to them. I don't mind even if you're going to beat me, but I'm going to stand up to you. And so I just believe that every human being needs to be respected. Every human being has a space. It doesn't matter whether the person has money, whatever gender the person has, or where the person is coming from. Every human being needs to be accorded the same rights, the same respect, and that's for me what I believe in, and I stand for that, and I'm never afraid. I was less than 10 years old when I said to myself, the worst thing any human being can do to me is to kill me. And that is not the worst thing because I'm going to die anyways. And for me, sometimes people said, are you not afraid? I'm like, death for me is not when I can no longer breathe in oxygen or breathe out carbon dioxide. Death for me will be when I can of being killed. I mean, the truth is the truth, and we just have to say it. And I would rather stand on the side of truth and justice than on any other thing. So, so for me, I speak on these issues. I've been taking on issues, for a very long time. I grew up lost his businesses. I grew up poor. I would go to school in the morning without breakfast. Coming back home, I wasn't expecting lunch. And I remember when I was writing my SSC, which is the exam you write when you're leaving your secondary school in Nigeria. And I didn't have textbooks, and I was begging people to give me textbooks. I never got those. As a teenager, I was angry at Nigeria, angry at the leaders, angry at the corruption, the bad governance, the fact that people weren't seen as human beings, especially if you're poor. I grew up in a ghetto, and so we're not seen as human beings. You are practically nameless, faceless, and voiceless because you're poor. And so I was determined to leave that ghetto, to work on my financial independence and everything. When I turned 40, I realized I also had become the problem of Nigeria. And how did I become the problem of Nigeria? By my silence, by not focusing on national issues, by just focusing on my life and the people around me. So on my 40th birthday, I said, from now on, if God gives me another 40 years, I'm going to focus on Nigeria. 4 months after my 40th birthday was when Chibok girls were abducted. And I joined other Nigerians to make that call for Chibok girls. And for me, take a stand now. If I don't do what needs to be done to get Nigeria to be the great country it's supposed to be, then I myself, the adult me, would have failed the way that I used to be, that asked for help. I always say to people, I'll continue, no matter what Nigeria throws at me, I will continue to fight for Nigeria. I fight for the unborn generation, the way I wish others had fought for me before I was born. Because if they had fought for me before I was born, I would have met a great country. I wouldn't be here fighting for human rights, fighting for women's rights, fighting for us to be allowed to live. I should be fighting for things like butterflies to have flowers to pollinate. I have people in other parts of the world who that's what they fight for. They are fighting for animal rights. They are fighting for rights for tree not to be cut. I want to do those kinds of fights. I don't want to be fighting for basic things that my grandparents were fighting for before independence.
Indeed. Madam Aisha, thank you so much for your time and for talking to us on West Africa Democracy Radio. We do appreciate your time and we wish you a happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much for Women's Day. We need more than a day. It has become like tokenism now. They just gloss over it. Fancy themes, accelerate action. The only action we are seeing them accelerate in Nigeria is to take women down and take away strip us of every right that we have. I think there needs to be more to that than just paying lip service. There's nothing to celebrate. Now we are marking the days because instead of improving, we seem to be going backwards. So there is more that needs to be done beyond just setting aside a day and looking for fancy themes.
Indeed. Thank you again for your time, and we hope to have you someday to talk about other issues, not just on International Women's Day. Thank you again, Madam Aisha.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. And that's the much we can take on this edition of WADR Specials. Thank you so much for joining us on our YouTube channel at WADR News and on radio, West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM in the car. Don't forget to connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News. I am Imoh Edet. Until next time, bye for now.